The red lights flashing across the bridge made Commander Vextel's 4 eyes hurt. Another explosion lit up the darkness of space as one more coalition ship died. The HFY were winning, and they were winning badly. Vextel's scaled fingers dug into the metal of his command chair. His claws left deep scratches in the surface. Around him, his crew worked frantically at their stations, but their faces showed fear. Even the bravest aliens in the galaxy were scared, now. "How many ships have we lost?" Vextel asked. His voice came out steady, but inside he felt sick. 23 in the last 2 hours, Commander, his tactical officer replied. The young alien's voice shook. "The Veltari Crystal Warriors. They're all gone. Every single one of them. And the photonic guards can't hold their energy shields anymore." Vextel looked out at the battle. The Veltari had been legends. Warriors made of living crystal who could cut through steel with their bare hands. They had never lost a battle in 3,000 years. Now their shattered remains floated in space like broken glass. The photonic guards were just as famous. Beings made of pure energy who could move faster than light itself. They had protected the galaxy's most important worlds for centuries. Now they flickered and died like candles in a storm. The HFY ships moved through space like hungry wolves. Their black holes seemed to eat the light around them. Their weapons fired streams of purple plasma that cut through the strongest shields like they were made of paper. Every shot meant another coalition ship turned into floating debris. "Commander," his communications officer called out. Her voice was so quiet he almost didn't hear her. "The High Council wants to talk to you. Right now." Vextel knew what this meant. When the High Council called for an emergency meeting during a battle, it meant they were out of options. It meant they were desperate enough to try anything. "Put them through," he ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the faces of the galaxy's leaders. Aliens from dozens of different worlds, all looking older and more tired than Vextel had ever seen them. They had ruled the galaxy in peace for so long that they had forgotten what real war looked like. Commander Vextel, the council chairman, spoke first. His voice sounded like grinding stone. "We need to discuss Protocol 7. The bridge went completely silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and stared at the screen. Protocol 7 was something they had all heard whispered about in military academies, but nobody really believed it was real. "Are you certain about this?" Vextel asked. "The records say those assets were destroyed centuries ago." "The records say many things," another council member replied, "but some records are kept secret for good reasons. The deathworld soldiers are real, Commander. They're sleeping in a facility that officially doesn't exist." Vextel felt his blood turn cold. Every child in the galaxy grew up hearing scary stories about the death world called Earth, a planet so dangerous that it killed most of its own life, forms a world where the weather could burn you alive or freeze you solid, where the very air was poison to most species. The stories said that the creatures from Earth were monsters. They could survive in conditions that would kill a Veltari warrior in seconds. They fought with primitive weapons but somehow won battles against superior technology. They were so violent and dangerous that the galaxy had to quarantine their entire solar system. Sir Vextel said carefully, "Those are just stories. Legends to scare children." "No, Commander," the chairman's voice was grim. "They're not stories. 300 years ago, we found the last survivors of Earth's final wars. 20 soldiers who had fought through nuclear winters and plasma storms. We put them in cryogenic sleep because we were afraid of what they might do if they stayed awake." Another explosion lit up the bridge. A HFY dreadnought had just destroyed 3 coalition ships with a single shot. Vextel watched more good soldiers die and felt his options disappearing. "The facility is hidden in the neutral zone," the chairman continued. "We've kept it secret because we hoped we would never need them. But Commander, we're losing this war. Our best warriors are dead or running. Our strongest weapons are useless. We have nothing left except monsters from a death world," Vextel finished. Yes, the chairman said simply. Monsters who know how to win impossible wars. The communication ended, leaving Vextel alone with his thoughts. Outside, the Kethver continued their advance. Their ships moved closer to the galaxy's core worlds, where billions of innocent people waited in fear. Vextel looked at his tactical display. Red markers showed Kethver positions, spreading like a disease across the galaxy. Blue markers showed coalition forces retreating on every front. At this rate, the war would be over in weeks. He thought about the stories again. Earth soldiers who could fight in the vacuum of space. Warriors who used explosions and bullets instead of energy weapons. Creatures who never surrendered, never retreated, and never showed mercy to their enemies. Maybe the galaxy needed monsters. After all, prepare a fast ship, Vextel ordered. We're going to wake up some very old nightmares. The sound was like a snake letting out its breath. Steam poured out of metal boxes that had been closed for 300 years. Deep underground, in a place that didn't exist on any official map. 20 coffins made of metal and ice began to open. Kim Dujin woke up cold. His breath came out in white puffs as he opened his eyes for the first time in centuries. The air tasted stale and metallic. His body ached in ways he had almost forgotten, but his mind was sharp. A soldier's mind never really sleeps. Around him, 19 other metal coffins hissed open. Men and women climbed out slowly, their movements careful but ready. Each face carried scars from wars that the galaxy had tried to forget. Burns from nuclear fire, cuts from shrapnel, eyes that had seen too much death. Sound off, Dujin said. His voice was rough like sandpaper. 3 centuries of silence had made his throat dry. Park Min-ho, ready for duty, came the first reply. The corporal rolled his shoulders and flexed his hands. His body remembered how to fight even after all this time. Lee So-young, operational, said the only woman in the front row. She was already looking around the room, checking exits and corners. Old habits never died. One by one, all 20 soldiers reported in. They were the last survivors of Earth's final wars. They had fought when the planet was dying, when the sky burned with radiation and the ground shook with explosions that could crack continents. The room they stood in was built like a tomb. Gray walls, dim lights, and the smell of recycled air. Machines beeped quietly in the background, keeping track of systems that had run automatically for 3 centuries. Everything was designed to keep them alive while they slept. Why did they wake us up? Asked Private Choi Jin-woo. He was young when they put him to sleep, barely 20. Now he was technically over 300 years old, but his body was still 20. Because they need us, Dujin answered. He had been a soldier long enough to recognize desperation. Nobody wakes up the monsters unless the house is on fire. Heavy metal doors groaned as they opened for the first time in decades. Light poured in from the hallway beyond, and with it came visitors. The aliens walked carefully, like they were approaching dangerous animals in a zoo. The leader was tall and made of what looked like living crystal. Its body caught the light and threw rainbows on the walls. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. So these are the famous Earth warriors, the crystal alien said. Its tone made it clear what it thought of them. They look ... disappointing. Dujin stepped forward. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. He wore the same uniform he had been frozen in, green and brown cloth, with metal plates sewn in. No glowing shields, no energy weapons, no fancy technology. Just practical gear that worked. The aliens stared at him like he was something from a museum. His rifle was older than some of their civilizations. His armor was made of ceramic and steel instead of energy shields. His equipment looked primitive compared to their advanced weapons. What did you expect? Dujin asked. Glowing armor and laser swords. The crystal alien's body flickered with annoyance. We expected warriors who could justify their reputation. You look like you fight with sticks and stones. We fight with whatever works, Private Lee, So-young said. She had moved to Dujin's side without making a sound, and we're still here when everyone else is dead. Another alien stepped forward. This one looked like a giant bug with too many eyes. The reports say you survived on a planet that kills everything. That your people fought wars that destroyed entire continents. But you look so, small. Park Min-ho laughed, but there was no humor in it. Size doesn't matter when the air you breathe is poison and the rain burns your skin. We didn't survive because we were big. We survived because we were mean. The aliens exchanged looks. They had expected something different. Maybe soldiers who looked more impressive. Maybe weapons that glowed or made impressive sounds. Instead, they found 20 humans who looked like they had crawled out of a history book. Tell us about the war, Dujin said. It wasn't a request. The crystal alien's body dimmed. The Kethver Empire is destroying everything. Our best warriors are dead. Our strongest weapons are useless. We're losing on every front. And now you want the scary humans to save you, So-young said. Her voice was flat and cold. We need soldiers who can win impossible battles, the bug alien admitted. The records say you did that on Earth. Dujin looked around at his people. They were scarred and tired, wearing old uniforms and carrying ancient weapons. But their eyes were alive with something the aliens didn't understand. They were survivors from a world that had tried to kill them every day of their lives. We'll need briefings on enemy capabilities, Dujin said. Maps of the battle zones. Equipment reports. You'll help us? The crystal alien asked, surprised. Smile was sharp as a knife. We didn't survive 300 years just to die in bed. Show us your war. The aliens led them toward the surface, still not understanding what they had awakened. They wanted soldiers. What they got were 20 humans who had learned to fight, when fighting meant the difference between living and dying on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. The monsters were awake, and they were ready to hunt. Admiral Krendith pressed his face against the thick glass wall and watched the humans below. His 8 tentacles curled and uncurled with worry. The testing facility was supposed to be the safest place in the galaxy, but somehow, these 20 humans made him nervous. Look at their weapons, his assistant whispered. The young alien's voice shook with disgust. They shoot actual bullets. Metal pieces that fly through the air. How primitive can you get? Down on the training floor, Sergeant Kim Dujin was leading his team through a rescue mission. The scenario was simple. Save the hostages, eliminate the threats, get out alive. It was the same test that the galaxy's best warriors took. Most of them failed. The humans moved differently than other soldiers. Where the Crystal Valtari warriors would have used energy shields that glowed like rainbows, the humans threw gray canisters that filled the air with thick smoke. Where the photonic guards would have cut through walls with plasma beams, the humans used explosives that made loud bangs and left scorch marks. Their methods are so crude, the assistant continued. Look, that one is actually crawling on the ground. Privately, So-young was indeed crawling, but she was doing it for a reason. She had spotted an enemy position that the other soldiers couldn't see from standing height. While her teammates created noise and confusion at the front door, she slipped around to the side like a snake. Admiral Krenith had seen thousands of soldiers train. The best warriors in the galaxy moved like dancers, their energy weapons humming with power, their shields glowing with protective force. These humans looked like scavengers who had picked up old junk and decided to fight with it, but they were winning. Computer, show me the test results so far, Krendith ordered. Numbers appeared on his screen. The humans had completed the hostage rescue in 12 minutes. The last team of Valtari warriors had taken 18 minutes. The photonic guards had taken 22 minutes and lost half their team. That can't be right, the assistant said. Run the test again. On the training floor, something happened that made Krendath's tentacles go completely still. Private Choi Jinwoo had been hit by a training laser that simulated a serious chest wound. According to the rules, he should have been out of the fight. Instead, he kept shooting while Private Park Min-ho dragged him to safety. "He's been shot," the assistant said. "Why is he still fighting?" Krendath watched Ginwoo continue to provide, covering fire even while being dragged across the floor. His simulated wound would have killed most aliens immediately, but the human acted like it was just an inconvenience. He never stopped watching for enemies. He never stopped protecting his teammates. "Computer, what is the standard protocol for a chest wound of that severity?" Krendath asked. "Immediate medical evacuation and combat ineffectiveness," the computer replied in its calm voice. "And what is the human doing?" "Continuing combat operations while receiving field treatment." The assistant's face turned a sickly green color. "That's impossible. No civilized being fights when they're that badly injured." But the humans weren't finished, surprising them. While Jinwoo was being treated, the rest of the team had split up without anyone giving orders. They moved like they could read each other's minds. When Doojin pointed to a door, Soyoung was already moving toward it. When Park Min-ho spotted an enemy, the others were already taking positions to support him. "How are they communicating?" the assistant asked. "I don't see any electronic signals." Krendath checked his instruments. The humans weren't using radios or telepathic enhancers. They weren't even talking to each other most of the time. They just seemed to know what their teammates were thinking. The most disturbing moment came when Park Min-ho found some training supplies that weren't supposed to be weapons. In 5 minutes, he had turned a medical kit, some cleaning chemicals, and a food heater into a bomb. The explosion blew a hole in a wall that was supposed to be indestructible. "Sir," the assistant's voice was very quiet now. "They're not just using improvised weapons. They're making improvised weapons out of things that aren't supposed to be weapons at all." Krendath watched the humans finish their test. They had saved all the hostages, eliminated all the threats, and gotten out in record time. They had done it with equipment that belonged in a museum and tactics that looked like organized chaos. "Send the results to High Command," Krendath ordered. "Tell them these humans don't fight like civilized beings." "What should I say? They fight like sir?" Krendath's tentacles coiled tighter. "Tell them they fight like they expect to die, but they're too stubborn to actually do it." Later that day, far across the galaxy, Kethfer intelligence officers intercepted the Coalition's communications about the human warriors. In their command ship, General Zarthik looked at the data and laughed with his officers. "Primitive weapons," he said, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Crude tactics, ancient equipment. These deathworld savages will be easy prey." His officers laughed with him, their voices echoing through the ship's corridors. They had never lost a battle to inferior technology. They saw no reason to start worrying now. They had no idea what was coming for them. Proxima. Station looked like a dying whale floating in the darkness of space. Holes covered its metal skin where enemy weapons had torn through. Red emergency lights blinked on and off like a weak heartbeat. Inside, thousands of people waited to die. The Kethfer ships surrounded the station in a perfect circle. 60 black warships with weapons pointed inward, ready to destroy anything that tried to help. For 3 weeks, they had shot down every rescue ship that came close. The space around Proxima Station was filled with the wreckage of failed attempts. In the middle of all that floating metal and ice, 20 humans drifted like ghosts. Corporal Park Min-ho floated in the vacuum of space wearing a suit that looked ancient compared to modern equipment. His helmet was scratched and dented, his air supply limited, but his voice was calm when he spoke into his radio. "I can see the station," he reported. "Kethfer ships are everywhere. This is going to be interesting." Around him, his teammates moved through the debris field like they belonged there. They pushed off broken pieces of starships, using the wreckage as stepping stones through space. Their suits were dark and cold, giving off no heat or energy signals that enemy sensors could detect. Privately, So-young checked her weapon one more time. It was a railgun that fired metal slugs using magnetic fields. No lasers, no plasma, no energy signature at all. To the HFY sensors, it would look like just another piece of floating junk. "Enemy patrol coming," she whispered into her radio. 3 ships, moving slow. They're not worried about anything. The HFY ships glided through the debris field like sharks hunting for prey. Their sensors swept back and forth, looking for energy weapons, life support systems, anything that showed organized resistance. They found nothing because the humans weren't using any of those things. "Jinwoo, your turn," Sergeant Kim Do said over the radio. His voice was so quiet, it was barely audible. Private Choi Jinwoo smiled inside his helmet. He pulled out a device that looked like it came from a scrapyard, a simple magnetic mine with a timer made of metal and explosives. Nothing electronic, nothing sophisticated. Nothing that would show up on enemy sensors as a weapon. He attached the mine to a piece of spinning wreckage and set the timer for 30 seconds. Then he pushed himself away and waited. The HFY patrol moved through the area where the mine was hidden. Their attention was focused on their screens, looking for energy signatures and radio signals. They never thought to scan for simple explosives attached to debris. When the mine went off, there was no sound in the vacuum of space, but the explosion sent chunks of metal flying like bullets. The lead HFY ship suddenly started spinning, out of control, its hull punctured in a dozen places, atmosphere bleeding out in white streams. "Alert! Alert!" the HFY commander screamed over his radio. "We're under attack." "From where?" his second-in-command replied. "Sensors show nothing. Something hit us. Some kind of projectile weapon." The other HFY ships immediately went to high alert, their weapons charging and their shields activating. But they had nothing to shoot at. Their sensors showed only empty space and floating junk. While the enemy was distracted and confused, the humans moved. They drifted through the chaos like pieces of debris themselves, cold and silent and invisible. Their dark suits blended in with the shadows. Their movements slow and patient. Kim Do-jin watched the HFY ship scramble to find an enemy that wasn't there, at least, not where they were looking. The aliens were searching for energy signatures, for ship engines, for radio transmissions. They had no idea that 20 humans in simple suits could be a threat. "They're looking in all the wrong places," Private Lee So-young observed. "Good," Do-jin replied. "Keep moving. Stay cold and quiet." The humans pushed deeper into the debris field, getting closer to Proxima Station with each passing minute. Behind them, the HFY patrol was still trying to figure out what had attacked them. Their sensors showed nothing but space junk and radiation. "This is impossible," the HFY fleet commander said to his officers. "No civilized species fights like this. What kind of savages attack with primitive explosives?" His tactical officer studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. "Sir, whatever hit us wasn't even aimed. It was just ... attached to debris. Like someone threw a bomb and hoped it would work." "Barbaric," the commander said with disgust. "Only primitive animals fight without honor or technology." But the humans weren't animals, and they weren't primitive. They were survivors who had learned to fight smart instead of fair. They had grown up on a planet where everything tried to kill them, where the only rule was to stay alive no matter what it took. As they approached Proxima Station, moving through the shadows like hunters, the HFY continued to search for an enemy that fit their expectations. They looked for ships with engines, weapons with energy signatures, soldiers with advanced equipment. They never thought to look for 20 humans with old suits and simple weapons who fought like they had nothing left to lose. The rescue mission had begun, and the enemy had no idea what was coming for them. The HFY flagship was beautiful in the way that deadly things often are. Crystal screens showed information in colors that hurt human eyes. Energy flowed through tubes in the walls like glowing blood. The artificial gravity was so perfect that water would fall in perfectly straight lines. Fleet Commander Zarthix stood in the center of it all like a king in his palace. His black shell reflected the lights around him, making him look like a living statue made of polished stone. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he studied the battle reports on his screens. "Sir," his tactical officer said, his voice tight with worry. "The primitive humans have somehow gotten inside our ship." Zarthix's mandibles clicked with amusement. 20 savages against 3,000 of my best soldiers. This should be entertaining. But sir, they survived the radiation in our outer hull. That should have killed them in minutes. Then they got lucky, Zarthix replied. "Alert all security teams. Let these deathworld animals see what real evolution looks like." The lights on the command deck suddenly went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light that made the beautiful ship look like the inside of a wound. From somewhere deep in the ship came the sound of screaming. "What's happening?" Zarthix demanded. "Environmental systems are failing," his tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "Gravity generators are shutting down. Life support is going offline section by section." Through the ship's corridors, HFY soldiers floated helplessly as artificial gravity disappeared. They had never trained for zero-gravity combat because their technology was supposed to prevent such problems. Now they spun through the air like leaves in a storm, unable to fight or even move properly. In the maintenance tunnels below the command deck, Sergeant Kim Dujin moved like a spider through a web he had built himself. Behind him, Private Lee, So-young and Corporal Park Min-ho followed without making a sound. They had spent hours studying the ship's blueprints, looking for weaknesses that the HFY had never imagined. "Gravity's down," So-young whispered into her radio. "They're floating around like balloons up there." The humans moved through zero gravity like they had been born in space. Years of fighting in the vacuum around Earth had taught them how to use walls, ceilings, and even air vents to push themselves where they needed to go. What was disaster for the HFY was just another day at work for them. Park Min-ho had found the ship's main computer core and was busy rewiring systems with tools that looked like they came from a junkyard. Every few minutes, another ship system would fail. First the weapons, then the shields, then the communications array. How are they doing this? Zarthix screamed at his officers. "Our ship is the most advanced in the galaxy. They're not using our systems against us, sir," his tactical officer replied. "They're breaking them, physically cutting wires and destroying components. Impossible. Our computer cores are protected by force fields. Not if you turn off the power first, sir." Meanwhile, Private Choi Jinwoo was working on the command deck's blast doors. These doors were designed to stop plasma cannons and energy weapons. They were made of materials that could survive the explosion of a small star. But Jinwoo wasn't using plasma cannons or energy weapons. He was using thermite, a mixture of metal powder and chemicals that burned hot enough to cut through almost anything. It was old technology, simple technology, the kind of thing that civilized species had forgotten about centuries ago. The blast doors began to glow red, then white, then started to melt. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as the command deck's perfect security was destroyed by something that looked like a road flare. "They're burning through the doors." Someone shouted. Carth Gag drew his plasma rifle and aimed it at the melting entrance. His weapon was a masterpiece of alien engineering, capable of cutting through tank armor with pinpoint accuracy. Around him, his officers did the same with their own advanced weapons. The doors fell inward with a crash that shook the entire deck. Smoke poured through the opening, and through it came 3 humans who looked like they had crawled out of history. "Primitives," Zarthix snarled, his weapon charging with a high-pitched whine. "You think your crude tools can defeat true technology?" Kim Dujin's railgun barked once. The metal slug hit Zarthix in the chest and sent him flying backward into his own command console. Sparks flew as advanced systems shorted out from the impact. The fleet commander struggled to rise, his perfect armor cracked and smoking. "We're not primitive," Dujin said quietly. He kept his weapon pointed at Zarthik while checking on his teammates. "We're survivors. There's a difference." Soya was treating a wound on Park Minho's arm, using medical supplies that looked ancient compared to Kethfer technology. But Park Minho was conscious and alert, ready to keep fighting if necessary. "Survivors." Zarthik coughed, his voice weak. "You fight with metal and fire like animals. We fight with whatever works," Dujin replied. "And we're still here when you're not." Hours later, Coalition ships arrived to find Proxima Station safe and the Kethfer fleet surrendering. The impossible blockade had been broken by 20 humans, with old weapons and older tactics. Admiral Krendath read Dujin's report with amazement. The humans had not only won, but they had taken prisoners, treated wounded enemies, and made sure no civilians were hurt in the process. The galaxy had learned something important that day. Sometimes the best technology wasn't the newest or the most advanced. Sometimes the best weapon was the will to never give up. No matter how bad things got, the humans from the death world called Earth had reminded everyone of a simple truth. In the end, it's not about the tools you use, it's about the person using them.